Welcome to the Exit Mindset Podcast. I'm Rem Oculee. 15 years ago, when I was trying to sell one of my companies, I couldn't get what I thought was the right price for it. I realized I had things set up the wrong way, even though the company was profitable. So I spent years researching and studying exit strategies to improve my company's valuation. I discovered that the same process that improves valuation would improve business profitability and give me more free time. I'm here to show you what I have learned. You see, the best way to grow your business is to look at it from the perspective of someone who's going to buy your company. Once you start thinking that way, magic happens, and you start seeing things you could not see before. But that's not all. I also discovered the 3 principles that you must know to command a better price for your company. The 3 principles are: first, the product; second, the infrastructure; and third, the conversation you have with the consumer. Once you master these 3 principles, you will be on your way to increasing your profits, your company valuation, and get more work-life balance. So listen in and learn how you can do that. I will teach you through this podcast lessons from the trenches, and we will have a dialogue with some of the greatest minds on the planet. Now today, we are going to talk about the economy. We are in COVID-19 era, and hopefully we're going to be out of it pretty soon. But in the meantime, while we're here, there are a lot of things we got to think about and process as business owners. And one of the first things we got to think about is that how are we looking at the economy? Every day, you're going to face gloom and doom. Every day, you're going to hear this company laid off people. The economy is doing this. Our GDP is lower. On and on and on. It's a slew of negative news, not to mention the casualties you hear about every day. So in that insane situation, how do you keep your sanity? How do you maintain a positive outlook? So to do that, I'm going to start by telling you about a story I heard about a long time ago. I don't know what the source of it is, but it really stuck in my head, and I always remember it and always use it. The story goes that way. A blind man has a cart and he sells on the street. One day, his son sees him and comes to him and says, "Dad, what are you doing?" He says, "What am I doing? I'm selling my stuff here." And the son goes, "Didn't you know the economy was bad?" He says, "No. I guess now I know now." He says, "Okay." Son goes and come back a week later. He sees his dad sitting on the pavement next to the cart. He goes, "Dad, what are you doing?" And the father says to him, "You told me the economy is bad, so I stopped selling." The moral of the story is that his dad did not know that the economy was bad and he was doing normally and doing well. But as soon as he figured that the economy was bad, he figured he can't do anything. What does that tell you? It tells you it's all in your head, to a degree, of course. We're not suggesting that there's no impact from the economy. But if you decide that the economy is the only factor that's going to contribute to your success, then you're correct. Whatever your brain tells you, whatever your mind tells you is going to be true. If it tells you things are bad, they're going to be bad. Things are okay, they're going to be okay. Things are great, it's going to be great. I've seen countless number of successes over the years where people went through bad economies and came out ahead. And I've seen people that let economies that are even minor destroy them because that economy wasn't as good as they expected it to be. It's in your expectations. There are a lot of things we can talk about when it comes to that. But ultimately, we want to focus on you and your business. As a business owner, you're going to be faced constantly with barrage of things that are going to be adverse and going to cause you to pause and think the whole world is going to collapse. The key to this is to realize the world isn't going to collapse, and maybe that's an illusion. And that illusion must be looked at as exactly that. And if you have an illusion in front of you, you wouldn't react in the same way as if you've known the reality. The reality is you're able to navigate. The reality of there's always something you can do. And the reality is that there are many ways to exit bad situations in the right way and without having to have complete devastation. There are many, many examples, even in this economy, that I've seen. I've seen a company that sells whiskey start selling hand sanitizer. What does that tell you? It tells you that they were a little bit more thoughtful, and perhaps they ignored the reality that there are some bad situation out there. Now, I've heard other companies that are actually took advantage of the economy in the way it was and start selling more of their product. Example, companies that are selling plexiglass. Well, they decided that they could actually sell their product to put barriers between tables at restaurants. So this is just an example. Companies that actually did something about it. But forget that. Forget a complete shift in your product. And the exit mindset, we talk about the product. And that's the reason I bring those companies up, because in the exit mindset, we say your product is king. And the number one thing you got to look at from an exit perspective is that if you're going to sell your companies, what is your product? So if you think of the company that converted their whiskey producing operation into hand sanitizer operation to make more profit, if you are a buyer of that company, what would you think when you come in during COVID-19, figure maybe I buy myself a business because I want to do something other than what I'm doing right now, or I want to expand? You are going to look at that company and go, perhaps that company has got more potential than the company that's just selling a product and can't even pivot. The fact that the company can adjust to an adverse environment has made this company more palatable. I'll make you a bet that they would command a better price by the seller themselves, by the company owner. They would say to the seller, look at this company. It's producing X amount of revenue. And even a COVID-19 hit, we just shifted operations and we're still making X amount of revenues, more or less, or you never know. Just depends. So you just created a better valuation by having adaptability and the ability not to think negatively. That person could have easily thought, hey, I don't think I could do anything here right now. I'll sell what I sell. Probably maybe people buy more, less. I mean, there's an argument that people are drinking more, but not everybody is exactly selling the same amounts. And a lot of people are finding that their product isn't selling as much. And that particular company was selling a little bit of a higher end product, but now they made it through a different product line. So keep that in mind as you look at your company. Now, you may not necessarily have to tweak your product. Maybe you don't have the ability to change a product line easily, even though I do think you should think about it. Take a look at your infrastructure. What changes you can make in your infrastructure? In the exit mindset, we talk about the three components: product, infrastructure, and conversation. First of all, what you can add to your infrastructure that could be helpful to you? There are some companies that added people to their staff. Some companies just said, we're going to lay off. Now, again, granted, there are difficulties depending on the situation. But if you think carefully about your particular business, you're going to find some pockets that you can improve on in your infrastructure. I'm not suggesting you go out and hire, but I'm suggesting that perhaps a key hire might be useful. Somebody that could be beneficial to your type of business, that could create business or help with the offering that you have. That's one way to do it. Now, another way to do it is maybe to streamline some of the excess fat that you have in your operation in terms of processes, in terms of one of my friends call it dripping nickels or dripping dollars through your pocket. In business, lots of times you're going to find a lot of people, a lot of companies are just in normal times, they're just spending on things that they don't even think about. It just makes sense. But if you look at your cost carefully, you might be able to streamline some of these things and have a little bit of better cash flow in your business. Maybe something you're spending on you don't need to, maybe some subscription or something like that, or some service you don't need. Again, it just depends. So that's the second thing. The third element of the exit mindset, of course, is the conversation. And I remind you, or if you have not heard this before and this is your first podcast, then the exit mindset have three principles that relies on. And if this is the first time you'll listen to this podcast, then we talk about the conversation. The conversation is any verbal, nonverbal communication that you would have with the consumer, no matter what it is. It doesn't have to be written, doesn't have to be verbal. Any communication, any perception the consumer have is the conversation you have with them. And here again, what can you do to improve the conversation? There are every business is different. There are a number of ways you can look at your situation and understand, are you communicating with the consumer in a way that you can change? Simple case in point. I'm just going to bring that up because these are some of the things I see from companies that I look at. Some companies simply change the conversation to the fact that during COVID-19, there might be ways for you to use our product, or Maybe they have given some discounts in some cases. They might have given some add-on. They might add extra services. Well, that's part of the conversation you have with your consumer. Your consumer will respond and will work with you probably because you have something for them that adds value to their life. So again, I'm not suggesting that there's one of these things or the other is the solution because every business is unique. And the exit mindset is based on ideas that you can apply to your business and company. So if you think about these things from a buyer's perspective, a buyer of your company perspective, you're going to be able to figure out things that you couldn't figure out normally. So the idea behind is that you put yourself in the buyer's perspective. Let's say you want to sell your company during COVID-19 situation right now that we have right now. You as a buyer, what would you want from your company yourself if you're going to buy your own company from somebody else? Again, is it one of those three things that you could change that could make the company more appealing and more valuable is what you should be looking at. Let's go back to the story of the blind man that was selling on the street. Again, if you just give up because the economy is bad and you think, well, the economy is bad and there's nothing I can do, you just guaranteed loss. You just guaranteed they're not going to win. And I'm here to encourage you and tell you that you need to change that. And if you already have it, do it even more. You have to have the belief that it will all just pass. You'll able to navigate through that storm. Another metaphor I could give you that can easily be understood is that you think yourself as if you're a ship in the ocean and there's a storm and you have two choices. You could say, I'm going to sink, or you could say, I'm going to get through it. And in my opinion, if you believe you're going to get through it, you can get through it. You set up your sales correctly, you have your crew aligned, and you make things work and make it happen. So the key component is stay focused. Stay focused on the objective. And what I want you to do is start drawing a plan, but make it a simple plan. What is your ultimate outcome when you want to get out of this entire COVID situation? Pretend it's going to end up, say, in 6 months, let's say. I would say 6 months or a year. So you can have two plans. Plan A, 6 months. Plan B is 1 year. What would you do? How would you handle it? What are the steps you need to take now? Who do you have to consult with? Who do you have to talk to? Which parts of the exit mindset do you need to look into? Is it the product? Is it your infrastructure? Is it the conversation you're having? And then put those three side by side and start writing things you could do to pivot, to change, to make things better, to navigate through the storm. And have some contingency scenarios where if this is to happen or to get worse, what would I do here? Or what would I do there? And if you do that, you're going to be able to get out of this as best as possible. The idea behind it, lots of times in business, you're going to find that the concept is not necessarily getting out intact, but simply getting out. And if you get out, you pretty much achieved 90% of what you should be doing because the rest of it is easy. One problem with a ship that sinks, you can't take it out of those. It's tough to bring it back up. But if the ship starts limping to port, you can always fix it at port. Your job is to get your ship to port and go from there. Remember, action is everything. Use it or lose it. I'm Rem Oculee, and we'll see you in the next podcast.
You've just listened to the Exit Mindset Podcast with Rem Oculee. If you haven't yet subscribed or followed, please do so in your podcast listening app. Or better yet, visit exitmindset.com to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our bonus content. Lastly, we want to help as many business owners as possible. If you know anyone who could benefit from the information given in this podcast, please feel free to share it with them. Until next time.